It's estimated that potentially up to 60% of the construction of Machu Picchu is underground, and these deep foundations were necessary to help with seismic movements and terrace drainage to make sure things would filter properly.
For more than a century, the famous terrace fields of Machu Picchu have been regarded as a brilliant solution, an ingenious way for the Inca to cultivate steep mountain slopes while managing the heavy tropical rains. Yet, recent detailed technical analyses reveal that the system is far more sophisticated than what would be required simply to handle surface rainwater. Beneath the visible terraces lie multiple layered foundations, carefully constructed subsurface drainage channels, and precisely engineered inlet and outlet mechanisms. All of these elements appear calculated to regulate subsurface pore pressure within the soil itself, rather than merely directing runoff across the surface. If this elaborate hydraulic architecture was not created solely to cope with rainwater falling from above, could it be that we have fundamentally misunderstood the true nature and source of the water this system was truly designed to master? Perfect design. At an elevation of nearly 2,400 meters above sea level, nestled on a narrow mountainside between two peaks, Machu Picchu stands as a direct challenge to logic. Any modern engineer would tell you this ranks among the very last places on Earth where one would choose to build a city. The slopes plunge steeply, the ground remains unstable, and above all, the site endures an extreme deluge of rain. Annual rainfall here can reach almost 2,000 millimeters, enough to transform any hillside into a torrent of mud and trigger devastating landslides. Yet Machu Picchu endures. It does far more than merely survive. It thrived for centuries, largely untouched by the relentless natural forces that erode the surrounding mountain. The secret behind this extraordinary endurance, as science has confirmed over decades of study, lies in the terrace system. More than 700 terraces carved into the slope serve as far more than flat plots for growing maize and potatoes. They form a comprehensive engineering solution, a large-scale environmental control system built with profound insight into hydrology and geology. Civil engineers who spent years dissecting every detail of the site have painted a picture of astonishing ingenuity. They discovered that the Inca did not simply level the ground, they restructured the entire mountainside from the inside out. When heavy rains pour down, water no longer rushes across the surface to strip away precious topsoil. Instead, it infiltrates swiftly. Each terrace functions like a colossal sponge. The fertile topsoil layer at the surface forms only the uppermost stratum. Beneath it lies a fine sand layer that filters and slows the flow. Next comes a thicker bed of gravel pebbles, creating voids that allow water to move freely. At the base sits a rough stone layer that disperses water pressure and channels it towards central drainage conduits. The entire system works in perfect harmony to neutralize the greatest threat, water itself. By directing water efficiently, the Inca addressed two problems simultaneously. First, they halted erosion. Second, and even more crucially, they eliminated hydrostatic pressure buildup within the soil, the kind of pressure that could unleash deadly landslides. This represents a design of flawless balance between human needs and environmental realities. It enabled a civilization not just to survive, but to flourish agriculturally in one of the harshest locations imaginable. The story resonates deeply. It casts Machu Picchu as an icon of sustainable living, a lesson from the past on harmony with nature. The stone walls showcase artistry, while the terraces embody science. Together, they form a seamless blend of beauty and function, a masterpiece validated and celebrated through time, a perfect solution to mountain farming, a design so complete, so refined, that it almost feels like an answer to a question no one ever asked. Dissecting a shell. Admiration for an overall system can sometimes obscure the unsettling questions hidden within its individual components. When we stop viewing Machu Picchu as a mere garden and begin examining it as a machine, those details start to emerge. Set aside for a moment the sweeping vista of 700 terraces and focus instead on the structure of a single terrace alone. Its engineering logic appears irrefutable. Yet upon close inspection, that very logic begins to undermine the familiar narrative we have long accepted. Start from the bottom. The foundation consists of rough stone blocks. Above this rests a thick layer of gravel pebbles. This stratum serves as the primary drainage network. Next comes the fine sand layer, preventing the fertile topsoil from washing down while acting as a secondary filter. Finally, crowning it all lies the nutrient-rich topsoil. 4 distinct layers, 4 separate technical functions, arranged in precise order, repeated almost identically across the entire mountainside. This goes beyond gardening. It resembles an industrial manufacturing process. Each terrace becomes a mass-produced, multi-stage water filter. And right here, the puzzle begins to deepen. The engineering logic of the design itself remains impeccable. What defies logic is the sheer scale of effort required to execute it. Extracting, transporting, and layering millions of tons of material into 4 distinct strata on a sheer mountainside demanded colossal labor investment. An investment that appears wildly disproportionate to the benefits gained. A far simpler system would have sufficed to combat erosion. The complexity and apparent redundancy in this design suggest an excessive, almost obsessive caution. It resembles constructing a fortress wall merely to fence a vegetable patch. The effort outweighs the reward, unless the reward was never truly about maize. The invisible river. In engineering, a core principle states that design should match its purpose precisely. You build a bridge strong enough to bear the loads it will face, no more and no less. When we apply this principle to Machu Picchu, the cracks in the agricultural story widen into a chasm. The issue centers on the overall operating capacity of the entire system. Consider the numbers. Thanks to the multi-layered porous structure, each square meter of terrace can drain an enormous volume of water in a remarkably short time. Multiply that rate across the total area, and you arrive at the maximum drainage capacity of the whole complex. The figure stuns the imagination. It reveals that the machine of Machu Picchu can handle a torrent equivalent to the flow of a small river. Now compare that capacity with the supposed source, rainfall. Even during the most violent storms ever recorded in the Andes, the volume of rainwater accounts for only a fraction of what the system is built to process. This system was not crafted with a safety margin to guard against occasional heavy downpours. It was engineered for a completely different volume of water, far larger and far more constant than anything the sky could deliver. The same logic applies here. A drainage system capable of channeling the flow of a small river must have been created to confront a small river. Yet, when we scan the surroundings of Machu Picchu and gaze upward, no such river appears in the open air. The data speaks plainly. The machine's capacity vastly exceeds the demands of the problem. If Machu Picchu was not constructed to withstand storms from above, then it must have been built to resist a powerful, continuous, and dangerous flow emerging from somewhere else. Once we accept this evidence, we stop seeing an agricultural endeavor. We confront proof of a colossal hydrological battle, a struggle against an invisible river. Where does it originate? The answer lies not on the surface, but deep beneath the city's very foundations. For years, geologists have recognized that Machu Picchu sits precisely at the intersection of a network of geological faults, deep fractures in the Earth's crust where rock plates grind and shift against one another relentlessly. Shift the perspective. Regard those faults not as sources of earthquakes, but as a vast natural pipeline system. A radically different logic emerges. These fractures serve as conduits, highways for groundwater movement. The massive rainfall that drenches the surrounding peaks percolates deep into the earth, converges within this fault network, and generates immense hydrostatic pressure from below, constantly striving to pry the mountain apart. The invisible river does not descend from the heavens. It rises from the fractured heart of the mountain itself. With this understanding, the location of Machu Picchu ceases to appear reckless. It transforms into an astonishingly deliberate engineering decision. The Inca did not stumble onto a weak point by accident. They brought their advanced technology to the precise spot where the leak posed the greatest danger. They erected a gigantic water treatment plant directly over the source. The terraces, functioning as passive filters and pumps, were never intended solely to shed rainwater. They formed a system engineered to continuously relieve internal mountain pressure by capturing and channeling this subsurface flow. They reduced the hydrostatic forces threatening to tear the bedrock apart. They were not simply draining a garden. They performed ongoing geological surgery. This reframes the entire purpose of the site. It was never merely construction. It represented intervention. Much like Dutch engineers raised dikes to hold back the sea, the Inca engineered an inverted dike, a machine designed to resist an ocean surging upward from beneath their feet. The machine still runs. Look once more upon Machu Picchu. Everything remains exactly as it always has. Tourists continue to wander the ancient paths, while llamas graze with quiet indifference. On the surface, nothing has changed. Yet within our understanding, everything has shifted. We no longer behold a city. We gaze upon the outer shell of a machine. The gentle murmur of water flowing through the stone channels no longer evokes the peaceful serenity of a royal garden. Now it becomes the sound of an active cooling system, the subtle hiss of pressure relief valves performing their essential duty. Every drop that escapes carries proof of hydrostatic forces successfully drawn away from the mountain's core. the greatest legacy left by those who built this place may not reside in the sun-oriented temples or the precision-cut stones. Their most profound achievement lies in silence itself. The silence of a catastrophe that never arrived. The silence of a mountain that should have collapsed centuries ago, yet continues to stand. It stands because the machine keeps working, day after day, night after night. For more than 500 years, it has performed its singular purpose without pause. Machu Picchu is not a ruin. Ruins mark things that have ceased to function. This site stands apart. It remains an ancient technology still in operation, a silent guardian whose true nature we have only begun to comprehend.
Perhaps its real story does not concern a lost empire at all. Perhaps it tells instead of an extraordinary engineering triumph that persists quietly to this very day. Amazing discoveries. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Share this video with friends and join the discussion on what these findings could mean. Your thoughts and questions are important, so let's explore incredible mysteries together.